Hey, this is Abe.
And this is Alexa.
Welcome back to the Get Out and Enjoy Life podcast, or GOEL.
Today we're talking about our stay in Venice.
So in our last episode, we ended with not being able to get into our room because another couple was staying in there. We ended up finding out. The next morning, our hostess, she switched us. It wasn't the smoothest switch just because...
Yeah, we were sitting at the desk with her just so we could get some information and figure out how we're going to do the room switch. And the other couple came down. We had been having breakfast in the same room, and we realized that they were the ones we were switching with. So she was like, okay, time to do the switcheroo of the rooms. And it was very awkward.
But we ended up just leaving our suitcases in the room that we had stayed in, and they moved the suitcases, which is really nice because there are a lot of stairs and they were steep. And she got our room ready probably within an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah, it was very quick.
So that day we ended up just walking around Venice, and she actually presented us with a map of all the areas we should go to.
How long it would take to walk different places. Because we had a couple things we were interested in looking at. Specifically, we chose to go to, I think, St. Mark's. I'm not sure if it's a basilica or it's called a cathedral.
I think it's St. Mark's Square because it has St. Mark's Cathedral in it.
Well, we went there, but we decided to go into the actual church is what we decided to do.
Yeah. And when we got there, there was a moderately long line. And with these cathedrals, basilicas, the churches in Italy, I don't know if it's all across Europe, but in Italy, they have a dress code where they want men to have shorts or pants that are past the knees, and then women...
Which, I'll be honest, that part isn't as strictly as enforced because the men's knees are still showing sometimes.
Yeah.
But with women, you have to have your shoulders covered, and you do have to have your knees covered. And some places have actual signs outside that say, you cannot come in with this. And I think it's not really as enforced if nobody from the church is there.
Yeah, because we've seen people going in and out. But here they were enforcing it.
Yes, they were going through the line, and when you came up, if you were wearing too short of a skirt, your shoulders were showing, they told you needed to cover up and that you couldn't come in unless you did.
Yeah, and there's actually a vendor right outside the cathedral, and I gotta hand it to them. They were just selling scarves for 10 euros a piece. And
actually, I got mine for 5.
Oh, you got yours for 5. Yeah. So Alexa, she had to cover her shoulders, and she ended up getting a scarf there.
Yeah, so. I actually... Since I've been to Italy before, I knew that you have to have your shoulders covered and things. I did have a scarf. I just didn't bring it with me. And so I had to buy one. Yeah.
When we got into the cathedral, it was gorgeous. It's kind of interesting on how they did it, just because it said 30 euros per person on a sign farther down the line, and it's see these 4 museums or sites for 30 euros, and then you get into the cathedral where you're gonna have to pay, and it's 3 euros a person. And we're great. But then to get into different parts of the cathedral, you have to pay extra. Yes. So that 3 euros is not just for the whole cathedral. To see
an altar,
right? See the altar that was 5 euros a person or something, and then they see the upstairs, it's another 7 euros.
Yeah, so it adds up over time.
It's really what you want to make of it.
But it was very beautiful. I mean, gold just everywhere. The detailed images on the ceiling and the domes was gorgeous. And
the touch on the gold, when I saw all the gold everywhere, I thought it was gold leaf, plastered onto the wall. But when we got up onto the upper balconies there, we got really close to it, and it was thousands or maybe millions of little tiny gold tiles.
Yeah, all pieced together.
Yeah, in these mosaics, really. And they had a little museum up there.
Yeah, that kind of told you about when they did a restoration on it, what piece went where, and they kind of reconfigured everything so it would look like the original.
One of the interesting things also about this cathedral is, it's called St. Mark's Cathedral or Basilica. And what I believe is, they had a coffin up under the altar there.
It was in basically stone.
Yeah, a stone, I don't know if it's called sarcophagus or what, but I think St. Mark is in there.
That's what one of the tour guides literally said.
Yeah.
That's his, like, grave, basically.
Right. So it's kind of interesting that they, like, break bread over that. And, yeah. So, and one of the last things about the cathedral was that, where all the people sit for the cathedral, you can't see in past or to the altar or anything. It's all, like almost like all shut off. But we ended up getting out of the cathedral. What did we do after that?
I think we walked around or we got some food.
Yeah.
But
the rest of the day moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, we kind of just explored, basically. We,
yeah.
Walked out to different areas we hadn't been to, saw the sunset. And then the next day, we decided we wanted to go to this King Tut exhibition that was happening, celebrating, I think, 100 years since they found the tomb.
Yeah.
Of King Tut.
And when we got up, we ended up walking to the building there, and I hadn't realized that they'd actually been doing this exhibition for about a year already. It's like
it closes this year.
Right. So it opened in October of last year, and the building itself didn't look like anything, honestly.
No, not like much at all.
And I was like, we got to get in line, because I thought it had just opened, which Alexa's like, why are we going so early? We went I feel like we went like 45 minutes early, an hour early, and no one was there. And then all these tour groups kept coming through. I'm like, oh man, they're going to all get in line and see this
like,
thing.
we have to get in the front.
We have to get in the front so we can get in. And no one got in line. And then, like, I don't know, like 15 minutes prior,
people started showing up.
Yeah.
And what happened is anybody who had bought a ticket online got separated into a separate line from us.
Yep.
And then they got to go in first.
Yeah,
So we waited for nothing to be the first ones in.
For real. Which, makes sense if you buy your ticket first. But we got a free, like, audio, like, kind of tour thing.
Yeah.
Like, tape recorder type stuff.
That was part of the ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's 3 stories. I think it's really only like 2 levels of stuff.
Yeah, it was
like,
kind of confusing.
artifacts.
They said 3 levels, but it was really more like...
Yeah, and there are a lot of stairs. Oh my gosh. There's no elevators in any of these buildings.
There was an elevator for this
was there?
one, but we just couldn't get on it. I think it was only for...
it's like handicap.
Like for accessibility.
Yeah,
like,
accessibility.
Things.
And so we started off the tour, like, listening to the audio tape and everything, and then we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. We were like in one room for like 45 minutes.
So we would go around, and what you had to do is there would be a number next to the object that you were looking at, or like group of objects. Yeah. And you would press like 1 if it said 1, and like the person who was talking on there and explaining all the information, there was so much information, like just for one piece. Yeah. Literally. And so by the time I got to like number 7, I was like, I'm over this.
There's like 30 of them, I think.
Yeah. I was like, I'm over this, and I'm just going to start reading what's on the wall, because it was a shortened version of what they were saying. Sometimes they were actually, basically it sounded like they were reading off what that part said. Yeah. So I just read it, went at my own pace, and then there were also some virtual, like VR type.
Those were cool. Yeah,
aspects
there were 2 of those.
Yeah.
The one interesting part is they didn't, for the King Tut exhibit, they didn't start at King Tut. They like literally started from like almost like Mesopotamia, like Neanderthals. Actually, prior to that, they were like explaining Neanderthals.
Give you like the background.
Yeah,
of like
everything.
Just, yeah.
Which their explanation was like, you can't separate like culture from like, I guess it all builds up on itself. But so by the time we actually got to the King Tut like pieces, it was like, oh man, we've been here for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and so unfortunately we just kind of walked through those. We read some of the stuff, but
it didn't go as in depth as we would have liked to, because we would have been there for hours, honestly.
So it's a very thorough exhibit and very well put together, but and then after we were done with that, we're like, there's no point in like pushing ourselves to the vacation.
Yeah, we want to be able to enjoy, because there are so many things that we wanted to do while we were there that just didn't happen because of time, and I think that was okay. Yeah, because when it gets to the hottest point of the day, it's honestly not even worth it to go out. There's lines, it's hot.
The amount of people is just increased for some reason.
Yeah, and so usually we've been like taking time during the middle of the day to just go back to whichever hotel or bed and breakfast or whatever it is that we're staying, to just rest a little and then go back out in the evening.
When we got into our room, our actual room, it was gorgeous. It had the raftered ceilings, like brick for the roof, and like nice thick solid beams that you could see. And then we had a patio, or like
it's called an altana, is what it's called.
That was the name of the room, yeah.
And well, that's the name of the balcony as well.
I didn't know that.
And so it's from like the 12th century or something. They used to have these types of balconies.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the reason why we wanted the room. You could overlook the rooftops of like, Venice, which was really beautiful. You could see the stars. And it even had this portion that you could like pull back. It's like a cover just above the balcony. And it was really beautiful at night.
Yeah, unfortunately, we actually didn't spend that much time out there.
No.
Just because I think part of it was really hot the entire time we were there. Even at like 8 o'clock at night, it was still it's like 80
sweating.
Degrees. Yeah. So it was nice actually, because we actually hung our clothes out there when we did laundry, and everything dried because we have like cotton things that we didn't want to dry in the dryer.
Yeah.
But but the AC in that room absolutely worked amazingly. It was great. And then the next day, we've kind of planned days where I get to pick something that I want to do, and Alexa then picks something she wants to do. And
so what I wanted to do was go to the Venice Biennale, and it's basically, we went to the architecture portion of the show, and so basically there are these two different grounds. And we went to the section where there were about 20 to 30 countries represented. And each country that's represented there has their own building. And basically what happens is they have a group of artists or architects, and or one single architect, and they represent that country. And so we went to go see Japan's, we saw Denmark's, we saw the United States, and we got to see kind of what innovative things each country wanted to talk about.
Yeah, what was your favorite one?
I really loved Canada's.
Canada's good.
The name of this show was Laboratory of the Future, and so it had a huge focus on sustainability, climate change. There was also race involved in there. And so we got to see a lot of different styles and different ways of thinking about how the climate is affecting just our daily lives, and what people are thinking of, and how to include green spaces, and people are talking about housing. It's just a lot of subjects
Canada
were covered.
really talked about the housing and the
housing crisis,
houselessness, and
affordability of housing,
and even the Native Americans.
Well, I don't think they're Native Americans there, but the indigenous
people.
population.
Yeah. And they actually, one of the ladies in there, she talked about one of the indigenous ladies, she talked about she had a tiny home and she was living on land there, and she got pushed off of it, and they did very well at explaining all of the problems going on at the time there at this time now. And how they want to fix it. They actually wanted to put a gentrification tax, which when someone sells their house, if they buy it for $80,000 and then they sell it for $1 million, the community would get something like 25% or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly of the actual sales, so that they could put it back into affordable housing and help the community out, which it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. I was really moved by what Canada kind of had done. And even on the outside, it looked like a bunch of protest signs, basically, of about housing, about, people, about indigenous people, all these different things. So it really drew our attention when we walked over to it.
And Venezuela also had a very cool one. Just briefly touch on that. It was they had built basically it sounds like 186 acre complex.
It was huge. I don't remember.
Like the 1940s, 1950s, had a hospital, universities, everything. But and
it sounds like one architect planned this
right.
whole, they have green spaces and it's like a university.
It was like
basically.
way ahead of its time. It almost sounded like kind of like a utopia of sorts. And anyway, they're renovating that now, and so that's why this came to light here.
And it's been in 2000 it was marked as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And then the United States, I wasn't super impressed with theirs. Unfortunately, they talked a lot about plastic and how it was created in the United States and the problems with plastic, but the kind of what was lacking for me from their exhibit was that there wasn't a lot of things to look at.
Honestly, for me, when I thought about the exhibit the United States put on versus the others, it was like it almost had more of like an art type focus rather than like an architecture type focus, because it talked about the harms of plastic and how we're so reliant on this material and like the consumption, like overconsumption of having all this material. And I think it was more to like provoke thought, because they had a lot of plastic just around us, and how you moved through the room. It was like you went through these plastic like curtains almost to get through there. So it was more like you had to think about it a little bit more rather than it being like a physical building, maybe that you're looking at, or, something like that.
And then the other thing was for each of these exhibits, I don't know if this is my own ignorance, but for some reason I thought like each country would be sending like representatives like from their country to like be putting on these exhibits. But I don't think it was that way. I think it was just the people,
I think it was people who were maybe knowledgeable about that specific countries, what they put into the exhibit. So that they could give information. Yeah,
there were so many countries to see. We just didn't make it to all of them, but we did make it to the main Biennale.
Yeah, exhibit, which had 16 different artists who were from the African diaspora. And that was kind of like a big focus. And so we got to see kind of what's been done in like Africa, for example, proposals for projects coming up, like libraries and churches and a few other countries, although some weren't focused on specific countries necessarily.
Right.
They were just thinking about architecture in general and art and
when
those
they
kinds of things.
Like their exhibits were like spot on. Like when they put them together, like they had like huge they had like scaled down models of like
they were beautiful
of these like churches or these buildings that they wanted to do it. They were like built out of, it almost looked like they were like laser cut out of wood or something. I don't know.
They were pristine, like perfect.
Very perfect. They were gorgeous. And then they had other ones that were just almost like kind of abstract around, like lots of colors and like yellow and green on them.
Robots. There was like all kind of things.
They're melding they meld like you took a video of a street and then a robot is walking down it.
Yeah.
Some of them it went over my head, honestly. I was like, I didn't totally get it, but it was all super cool.
Yeah. So we did that, and then we left, and actually our ticket allowed us to go to both like venues for the Biennale, but
just two venues for it.
Yeah, we just decided to see the countries and then the main Biennale kind of exhibit area, which was already a lot. We were there for a few hours.
Yeah, we were there for a few hours, and when we got out, it was like past noon. It was like 2 or something like that, and it was hot. Oh my gosh, there was no relief either. Yeah. Because like with the cool thing that we haven't talked about was with Venice is you could kind of stay out later out in the day just because the buildings are so close together.
Yes.
They're like, some of them are only like maybe 2 feet apart. And so you're shielded from the sun from these buildings because you're walking through all the different alleyways and everything.
Yeah.
But on this stretch where we walked, it was right along. No, yeah, right along the water, and there's no shade at all.
And we actually decided to walk all the way to the Biennale, which was about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we walked back.
Yeah, but we ended up going through the alleys and such to help out with the sun.
And we even stopped to get some food too.
Yeah.
So.
And then late after resting, we talked about doing a gondola ride, which We actually went to Las Vegas, and I forget what hotel it was, but they were doing
Yeah.
gondola
Oh,
rides
the
there.
Venetian.
The Venetian, duh. And the gondola rides there, I think they were like
They're expensive.
They were like 140, like
It was
for
something. I don't
like two
remember.
people or something like that.
Yeah.
And we thought I thought that like to ride a gondola it was like per person, but our hostess told us it's not.
No, she was like, well, if you go during the day, it's 80 euros for the boat. That could be
Yeah.
up to 5 people in there.
Yeah.
Or at night, it's 100 euros for the group. So we were like, well, that's definitely worth it. So in the middle of the day, we kind of took a rest break. We were like, oh, we're so tired, all the walking and heat and everything. But then we were like, let's go find a gondola. And basically around the city, they have these signs that say like gondola service, and they'll be in random areas. They'll be right next to the canals, and there'll be steps. And so that's how that's where you can go to get a gondola ride.
And when we went to go look for a gondolier, I don't know.
Gondolier? I don't know.
Called. But there was one like maybe a block or two out from where we were staying, and then I was like, Alex was like, let's go, and I'm like, no, I wanted to go find like where all of them are at, and so we walked probably for another 15 to 20 minutes to like the actual canal, but then the lady, our hostess, she's like, you don't want to go like in the main canals because then it's so bumpy and everything.
And she said you don't want to go in the morning, or somebody told us you don't want to go in the morning.
Yeah, because it's busy, I think.
Yeah, and they're like transporting all the goods and everything in the morning.
And so when you pay like this 80 euro, it's for a half an hour is what you're getting. And you can pay, double it, I suppose, and you just you pay, double.
Sure. Yeah.
But our hostess said that you want to make sure that you go at like in the afternoon, evening time, and not in like the big canals, because the half an hour gets eaten up by the gondoliers like trying to get through all the traffic and everything. And so we ended up walking backtracking, got some extra steps in there.
Got some cash just in case, because we weren't sure if they take card at all or they need cash. So I was like, Abe, we need to get some cash like before we do this, because
and when we got back, the gondolier was gone. So we were like, oh, we'll get in line. Yeah. We got in line. I went and got cash. The thing about the cash here has just been, it's been really hard for us to figure out what what ATMs our bank works with.
Yeah. So just as a little backstory, when we went to Positano, there was an ATM next to us that was associated with the post office. And that was the first time that we needed to withdraw cash, because we withdrew euros before we came. And so that specific ATM did not charge us extra to pull out the money, which was really nice. There were no extra fees or anything like that. Since then, we need to like withdraw some more cash, because it is a lot easier to work with, and some people prefer it. But they're charging us like between 3 and 4 euros just to do the transaction, plus another 11 to 16% just to pull the money.
And the 3 to 4 euros per transaction from an ATM is normal. I mean, we get that sometimes in the United States if you don't use your own bank.
Sure.
But like the
extra cost. Luckily, the ATMs are telling us that before we actually pull out the money.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah.
But
so it's asking us like, there was one ATM and it was like, we wanted to pull out, X amount of dollars, and then it was like $100 extra dollars on top of that to do the transaction. We're going to pull out like 250
or something in euros, like and it was like an extra 100 euros just to pay the ATM.
Yes,
like
or the bank or
whatever for it, and so we just didn't do it.
Yeah.
So luckily, a lot of where we've been at has taken card.
Yes.
And we've been able to just do that, and we're actually. We're going to probably just call our bank and figure out what bank they work with in the Europe area, or Europe and Italy. So, but yeah, we did the gondola rides. It was amazing. It was gorgeous.
It was peaceful.
What was your favorite part about it?
It just was really peaceful. It was quiet. We could see all the buildings from like a new perspective, which was really nice.
From the actual canal perspective. It was so quiet. I mean, because there's no motor on this. The gondolier is just pushing it with a paddle. I don't know what you call it, a paddle stick. And And yeah, when he's not moving, it's like you can't hear anything.
Yeah.
And
it sounds like, from what he said about being a gondolier, I think is what you call it, that this is like a tradition within families to like be gondoliers, basically.
Yeah, we talked to him, and he said he'd been a gondolier for 2 years, and
but his dad was.
His dad still
is.
Sounds like, yeah, he's sharing like a gondolier license with his dad. So I don't know how that works, but with them, like, they have to work separate days, and the gondola itself, I mean, the lacquer on this thing, it's thick. It's just beautiful. It's like really this really glossy black
with gold on
with gold. It almost, to me, at first looked like a coffin a little bit, like that gloss on the black coffins. I know that might be a little morbid, but yeah. We ended up finishing up our Venice trip. It was only about, I think, 3 days in total. Didn't do that long there, but we got enough in that we felt that we were ready to move on to the next spot.
Yeah.
And we're moving to Sirmione.
Which is on Lake Garda.
Yeah, the largest lake in Italy.
And so we're excited to kind of see what that's like, because this isn't, I think, I've never heard of this city before, or this area. And we're excited to see, maybe we get to go to the beach.
Yeah, and honestly, it was a mistake on my end to even be staying in Lake Garda or Sirmione, because when I was not familiar with the area, and I thought Alexa had said she wanted to stay at Lake Como, and I know nothing whatsoever about like the pop culture of it and anything. I'm like, Alexa, look, I found the hotel, and it's this price, and we can afford it and everything. And she's like, no, that's not it. But she's said, okay, let's do it anyway. Yeah. So we're traveling to Sirmione for about a day and a half, 2 nights worth. So,
and it'll be a good stop in between our before we go to our last city,
which will be Milan. So thank you for joining us again.
And don't forget to get out and enjoy life in whatever way that means to you. Maybe you go around your neighborhood. Maybe you look at some beautiful sights. Maybe you travel or hang out with friends. We just encourage you to do that, and we hope that you continue to join us on our journey.
And thank you for joining us again on Get Out and Enjoy Life or GOEL. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.